Hello, my name is Tony Pierce, and this is Marquee Memories, the show where we sit down with your favorite artists and talk to them about their top concert experiences as fans. Today, we've got the funky drummer of the Grammy-nominated group Lettuce, an outfit that he co-founded in 1992 in Boston. He's also worked with the likes of Average White Band and Pretty Lights. As a producer, he's produced 50 Cent, and unlike you and me, both of his parents are accomplished drummers. So let us welcome Adam Deitch.
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Sorry about the rain here in L.A.
I didn't know it rained here, but I learned.
Have you ever performed in the rain before?
Oh, yeah. I've played every... festivals are either pouring or muddy, or super dry and dusty, but I've done a lot of...
I saw a video where Lettuce was playing at Red Rocks, and it looked a little wet. Did it actually rain on you guys that night?
Yeah, our first time headlining Red Rocks, it rained so bad that we had to stop the show, and we were afraid we weren't even going to get to play. And a bunch of people left and ran to go to their cars because it was coming down so hard. It was like a waterfall coming down the stairs at Red Rocks. And then it ended up clearing up, and then more people came in. So we had like the full 10,000 by the end. So it actually helped.
Is it scary to be on a stage when the conditions are bad? Like, are you afraid of...
Yeah, you hopefully none of your band members get electrocuted. I play drums, so I'm pretty safe. There's not a lot of wires near me.
Yeah. Well, also, you literally have Jesus as your co-pilot.
Yeah.
Your bass player, Jesus.
Yeah, he's going by Maverick these days.
But, is he?
He's been Jesus for the past 10 years. So yeah, people are still transitioning his name there.
Right on. So did you start playing drums in like marching band or before that?
I was kicking in the womb. My mom's a drummer, and she was doing gigs live with my dad when up to like 8 months pregnant.
So,
yeah.
An outfit where there's two drummers?
My dad switched to keys so they could be in a duo together.
How sweet.
Yeah, so I grew up watching them play and watching mom play drums, and dad was more like the keyboard player. Yeah. But she said I used to kick to the beat when she was playing gigs, and I started on a kit when I was 2 years old, and
really
was playing concerts in front of my school at 5 and 6 years old. Yeah.
So do you feel like you just naturally had the groove?
I just had two great drummers in the house as parents, no siblings. I'm an only child. And two drum sets downstairs, and all the records, all the Stevie Wonder, all the Earth, Wind and Fire, and to play along with. And it was just it felt really natural. And any question I had, they were right there to answer.
I heard that your mom said, you can play my Gretsch snare, but you can't take it on the road. Is that true?
You did your homework. Yeah, she will not let me even bring it. Even if I go home for Christmas and I have a gig in the city, and I'll bring it back to the house tonight. She won't let me take it out of the house.
You guys a while back covered Express Yourself. Mm-hmm. Was that more of an N.W.A. cover or a Charles Wright cover?
Probably the first time I heard it was an N.W.A. version.
Me too.
And yeah, so a lot of the songs I love in hip hop, I also love the funk, the original version. And a lot of my generation, we know both. We're into both. And so, yeah, Charles Wright, and one of my favorite drummers, James Gadson, played on the original. So, yeah, I just love that song and the N.W.A. version as well.
The reason I ask that is your snare playing on that is amazing.
Thank you.
And that crack on that recording, is that mom's Gretsch or is that something else?
No, she wouldn't let me use that.
She wouldn't even let you in the recording?
No. Yeah.
So what snare are you using?
That snare, it was definitely a Tama snare at the time. They've been hooking me up with great instruments for a long time. So shout out to Tama.
So Tama, for people who love drums, we're talking Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, Lars from Metallica.
Yeah.
Is that why you were attracted to them?
I think they were trying to make a move into like a more funkier direction because they were kind of known as like arena rock guys. And they were trying to get more jazzy, funky drummers in there. And I was with John Scofield at the NAMM show, and they showed up along with Zildjian and a couple other companies and said, "You're our new guy," and I said, "Sure," because I had never had an endorsement for anything before. So and it's been like 20 years since then.
So is it just the dream of the musician? Like anytime you see like a cool new thing that Tama has or Zildjian has that you can say, Can I please have a bunch of those?
Yeah, pretty much. And we're doing an Adam Deitch custom snare drum now.
Ooh.
That's going to be out in 2026 that I'm really excited about. It's got all the crack that, it's got snares underneath the top head. So you get the extra crispy, like both. So it's 2 sets of snares.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I've never seen a snare like that. So I'm pretty excited for that to come out.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so should we get to your 3 shows?
Mm-hmm. Earth, Wind & Fire, Radio City Music Hall, New York City, 1987. When I was 11, my Earth, Wind & Fire obsessed parents brought me to Radio City Music Hall to see Earth, Wind & Fire, and I was already a fan. I was already been watching their HBO special that my parents recorded off the TV when I was 5, and I was really, really into them. And so going to see them at Radio City was just unbelievable at that era. It was, like 88. Obviously in the 70s, they were a different sort of thing, but they were still amazing. And it blew me away with just, the moves, the songs, the harmonies, everything that they're famous for, just mind blowing and inspirational. And I've played along with their records in the basement of my parents' house countless hours, so yeah, Lettuce is sort of like my dream of being in some sort of horn band, and kind of we cover a bunch of Earth, Wind & Fire also. So
the only thing you're missing out is the afros and the jumpsuits.
We don't do all that. We don't do all. Yeah, we have our own look and our own thing, but as far as the style, like we love what they did, and they created a lane for not just us, for a lot of other musical acts.
I'm curious about the horns at a live venue like that. Like, can you really hear the horns really loudly at Radio City?
Yeah, the sound was amazing, and they're famous for having the Phoenix horns, like the greatest horn section ever. And it was just, when the horns come in, ba-da-da, you start to cry. Like they trigger happy cry every time for me. And I think everyone should have music that makes you happy cry.
Yeah. I've also noticed that September has really like kicked in over the last couple of years. Like I hear, like right before September, you see it.
It's amazing that that's what they're known for now, by younger generations. But I encourage everyone to go back and to check out their 70s stuff and their early 80s stuff, and just their earlier catalog to get a rounder picture. I mean, September's a great song, and so is Boogie Wonderland, but that's just a small piece of what they are.
And also check out their videos too, because it's a whole look. I'm sure at 11, it was just eye-popping for you.
It was like I'm getting chills just thinking about seeing it at that point. Yeah.
Have you gotten to meet them?
Yeah. We with Average White Band, I got to open up for them on a bunch of dates. And I not only got to hang out with them, but I got to bring my parents in to meet them. And Verdine White, the bass player, hugged my mom, and my mom goes, "Oh, he smelled like baby powder." But that was a big moment for my family to, like, because they are like larger than life superstars to us, and to just like shake hands and give them a hug was just, yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
So what covers has Lettuce done of Earth, Wind & Fire?
We like taking some rare covers. Save the Children is one that a lot of people don't know. It's from their first or second record. It's just a beautiful song, about how the children of the future kind of like, but it's the funkiest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so we cover that, and we also do Yearnin' Learnin', which is a really like up-tempo, fast, big horn, good feeling song. And again, every time we play it, I'm getting chills and trying to fight that little tear, Yeah, it just triggers me into a beautiful place.
Well, I mean, both of those make sense because you guys are a very positive group. Even your originals are super positive.
We thrive on joy. And yeah.
There you go. And to me, that's kind of the fun of funk compared to like many other genres where it's, my dog in my truck went away. But funk is about joy.
Yeah, well, it also comes from the blues, and also, it's definitely like, as D'Angelo said, like it's black rock and roll. It's expression. It's, funk is is a very important part of the culture of American Black people and the world, and it's spread everywhere, and it should be a category at the Grammys.
Excellent point. I'm just realizing it hasn't been.
Yeah,
right?
It's like there's every category. but funk music, you know?
So you're a 2-time Grammy nominee?
Yeah.
Okay.
One with Pretty Lights and one with Lettuce.
And these are instrumental categories in the Grammys, right?
Yeah.
There isn't a funk.
It makes no sense. It's like it's art, like what George Clinton did and what James Brown did, and all the way up to D'Angelo, and it's like that's funk music, and like to say it's not worthy of a category is, I just don't understand it.
And when you hear it, you know that it is funk.
Yeah, and Harvey Mason, the great drummer, his son is the head of the Grammys, so he knows the funk is he grew up on the funk.
Wow.
Yeah, and so. I imagine in the next 5 years, it will be a category.
Okay, good. We'll put it out there.
Yeah.
We'll manifest it. Were your parents the ones that taught you about the funk, or just seeing Earth, Wind & Fire, you got it?
My mom saw Sly and the Family Stone in high school, and in the heyday in late 60s,
Yeah.
And she knew about it, and she knew about Earth, Wind & Fire before my dad. They met at Berklee College of Music, and she gave him those records because he was kind of into the Beatles thing at the time, and Buddy Rich and jazz, and she kind of brought those records to him, and they both fell in love with that style of music. And just, when I was born, it was just like, the excitement of how much they loved it made me into it at first. And then my generation, the hip hop generation, when all the samples started coming out, I'm like, I know that. So that's what got me into producing.
Yeah. So you don't have to sample the funky drummer. You can lay it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, after years of studying it, that's the only way my mom could get me out of bed, was playing James Brown loud in the morning to get me to go to school. Get up, get on up. And she'd turn it up to 10 and I'd get up reluctantly, but yeah.
Okay. Your second one.
Tower of Power. Tower of Power at the Bottom Line in New York City in 1988. We went to see Tower of Power.
Yeah.
At the Bottom Line, which is a tiny club, like not much bigger than this room. And it was so loud because we sat in the front row, and what is the commercial where you're sitting in a chair and your hair is blowing back? It was like that kind of vibe, like overwhelming. And they have like a 10-piece horn section.
Wow.
And I just remember being like, I want to do that. Like, that's the energy that I love. Yeah, that show definitely influenced my life to want to do what I'm doing now.
Didn't you kind of work with Tower of Power a little bit?
I took a lesson with Dave Garibaldi, the original drummer. And when I was around that age, because he was doing drum lessons around the country, and my dad realized he was going to be at my local drum shop, and it was $40 for an hour with, Dave Garibaldi. And I went in there as a 12-year-old and I recorded the whole thing on a cassette tape, and I made him play all the famous beats, but slower, so I could figure them out, which was not what he wanted to do. He wanted to do some other stuff. And I said, will you just play your famous beats really slowly? And I hit record, and he was like, all right, kid, you paid for your time. So I had that tape for years, and I really learned his stuff. Wow. So, and I still use that with Lettuce today,
Lettuce only has a couple of horns. Have you ever tried to do it?
We started with 5 horns.
Oh, you did?
We were a big horn band, and then we realized economically that's not going to work. But yeah, there were shows where we had 5 or 6 horn players, like for a bunch of years, like early 2000s to like around 08, 09, something like that.
Yeah. So but still you have a fat sound. So you might not need 10 horn players, right?
Yeah, on the records, we kind of do a little bit more overdubs and double, triple the trumpets, try to get that big sound.
Yeah.
But live, they sound great together, and they breathe together, our horn section. And, it still has that big horn sound, even though it's only 2 guys.
Have you seen Tower of Power since then?
Absolutely. When I was with Average White Band, again, we opened up for them we did a whole tour with Tower of Power.
Oh, wow.
So I was... at that time I was skateboarding around, and they like, oh, that skater guy, he plays drums with Average White Band. And so I ended up hanging out with all of them, and I got to jam with the bass player at sound check. He said, come on up here, come play with me,
Was that a dream come true?
Total dream come true. Wow. And they became mentors, and Emilio, the band leader of Tower Power, we became friends. I started playing him the songs I was writing, putting the headphones on him. He's, I like that kid, keep sending me stuff, And now we just on the new album, Let Us Cook, he helped us write the song Keep On. I sent him an instrumental. It's like right down the pipe, Tower Power, and he wrote some lyrics that inspired Nigel to rewrite the lyrics. And it was just a dream to collaborate.
I got a question for you about your writing, because you're one of the main writers of.
I spend a lot of time writing.
But as a drummer, now of course Neil Peart, he also wrote for Rush.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible for drummers to do a lot of the writing.
Yeah.
Do you do it on keyboards? Do you just hum it? How do you compose?
I grew up playing piano. I had piano lessons as long as I played drums, and my dad always had a bass on the wall in the studio and a guitar in the studio. So I played just enough piano, bass, and guitar to get my ideas down onto Pro Tools so they could become songs for other artists or lettuce.
Right.
And so I just really enjoy like the challenge of trying to put a guitar part together, one note at a time sometimes, and just to get it good enough so our guitar player Shmeens can hear it and go, I see what you're going for. I got this. And then you hear them play it and it's like, and it comes to life,
Yeah. You're amazingly prolific. So is this music that's in your head that you then try to put on the guitar? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I if I'm in a good mood, I'm walking around, and if I start singing something, maybe a horn line or a bass line or a drum beat or a guitar part, singing into the phone. I have all the voice memos, and then I go home and I go to my computer and then start the process of getting it from the voice memo into a decent demo.
I hear that's how Taylor Swift does it too.
Oh, wow.
So you're in good company, the voice memo.
I imagine, because that inspirational moment, you could either throw it away or you capture it, and I like, those are divine moments when those melodies come to you. So you should capture it, put it in your phone.
How many compositions do you think you have demoed for Lettuce over all these years? Over 100?
Over 100. Yeah. Like they if I write 5 songs, they might like one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like back in the day when I was producing for rappers, like play them 10 beats, they might like one,
Right.
So they're like my new, the rapper, that wants to spit on that track, so I write in bulk. And so that instead of me writing one song, I hope they like it. It's like, if they don't like it, well, I got 5 more. I got 10 more,
As a drummer making beats for rappers, do you use drum machines for them, or do you do it live?
I sampled my own drums here and there, and I'll combine my live drums with a drum sample to give it that extra thing, layers kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was one thing that always I felt separated, my drums from other, because I was doing that live hybrid real drums with sampled MPC style drums.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really enjoy like kind of that layering thing.
Also, I bet you it's easier. So if you are sitting in there with 50 Cent, if he's like, I like it, but can you do this to it? You can actually sit down at the drums and on the fly adjust, right?
Absolutely.
And so would you say you're more valuable as a hip hop producer than your typical person?
I'm just, I'm a hybrid kind of producer. Like, live instruments are part of what I do to make hip hop. When 50 Cent heard that track, I skateboarded down to his G Unit office, and and he's there, he's lifting weights, and he said, "Is that live guitar?" He heard the track, and they're playing it. I'm sitting there like, Mr. Cent, I hope he likes it, and so he says he's lifting weights, like, "Is that live guitar?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Cool." And then a week later, 50 likes that track, Nice. So having that live element in there, and it became the first song on the Curtis album, the one that he went against Kanye, they're face to face on Rolling Stone, and so yeah, it was pretty cool that he noticed that it was like real instruments,
If I can I ask you about playing EDM music?
Mm-hmm.
My belief is that audience is more locked in than any other audience for whatever reason.
It's a movement. It's strong.
They're super locked in. Whereas other genres, maybe they're talking, maybe they're just like kind of like humming along. But EDM, like they're so sensitive to every drop, every sound effect.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct about this?
Absolutely. I mean, what Break Science is my other electronic group. Shout out to Bormley. We started in like 2008, and we saw it coming, and we were influenced by like Flying Lotus and J Dill, a lot of kind of like hip hop electro hybrid stuff. RJD2, DJ Shadow, stuff like that. And then we were on the New York side, and then we ran into Pretty Lights the next year, and I got called to join Pretty Lights, which was a major thing. And he calls it electro soul, but they have the big drops of the EDM and the big bass thing, but it's got a lot of sampled soul music in it also. Syl Johnson, Sly and the Family, like he samples a lot of classic artists. So I really, vibed with him really well in that situation. And it taught me a lot about that whole scene. And for a while, Lettuce wasn't that busy. We were doing a couple of gigs a year. So I really dove headfirst into the electro soul scene. Pretty Lights brought over Break Science into his label and introduced us to his very loyal fan base that ended up supporting Lettuce, which is amazing because we're not EDM at all. So, now as those kids, become in their 30s and 40s now, they're full diehard Lettuce fans now. So it's just great how it all worked together.
Is there anything that you add to your drum kit when you're playing for Pretty Lights that you wouldn't have in Lettuce?
Well, it's funny because in Pretty Lights, I didn't use any electronics. And then when he started this recent tour, we met up and I helped him dial in a few like electronic things for his electronic kit. And then ended up being Alvin, my good friend Alvin Ford, who's playing drums. So yeah, I brought up how easy it is to use battery and to get good drum sounds to link with your kit. But with Lettuce, I use some triggers, that kick and snare triggers that for our hip hop more songs, like if I need a trap snare or 808, I got the thing right there and it's triggered to my drums so I could really get that extra oomph live.
I've got a technical question for you. You play your snare like this instead of, like this instead of like this, the jazz.
Yeah, well, traditional versus match. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did your parents give you a hard time about that? Did Berkeley give you a hard time?
Yeah, they're funk players. So most funk cats, play match grip. Traditional is more of a jazz purist thing. And
yeah.
We come from the match family where you get that power in the snare.
Right.
Traditional is like more of a finesse and a speed, snappy thing.
Berklee College of Music, which you also went to, they didn't try to teach you that jazz technique?
They're not changing your grip.
Great.
But they do want to, expose you to as much jazz as possible and teach you as much as they can about it, which I'm glad I got to learn so much from that school.
That's good. Well, yeah, kids, listen to this man because whatever technique you're using is totally working.
Yeah.
And it sounds great.
Oh, thank you.
Which is the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your third memory?
D'Angelo, Forest Hill Stadium, Queens, New York, 2015. It was a life changer. Everyone in Lettuce saw the original tour with Questlove, and they never let me, they always like, you weren't there, you should have been there. I was on tour with Average White Band or something, and I missed it. And they kept, for 10 years, I kept hearing about this gig with the Soul Sonics, and then I finally got to see the Vanguard Band with Chris Dave and Sharkey and Pino Palladino's son, Rocco. And just seeing that was so amazing. And they started remixing everything. Instead of like the album version, they were taking a Fred Wesley song like Foreplay and playing and singing Brown Sugar over it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. You could take like funk classics and then put your tune on top the melody. And so Lettuce does that a lot. We'll take like a classic James Brown song and then do one of our tunes on top, So we kind of got that from D and he's like completely ingrained in our like who we are as a band.
And also when you do something like that, it's almost like improv and the audience is like, oh, I'm really at a live show. This isn't just a recording.
Right. It makes it special. It makes the show special. And that's what we realize, like, especially for people that are coming to a lot of our shows, and we owe it to them to, every time they come, maybe we'll play a little faster, maybe a little slower, maybe we'll change the key, maybe we'll replace it with a classic hip hop song and do the same melody or that sort of thing. So every time you come to a Lettuce show, there's going to be something special about that show that will not happen again.
So was the group with you when you saw him at Forest Hills?
Yeah, we were all there. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet him?
I never got to meet him. A few members did. And we became friends with the band. I'm friends with Chris Dave, and I've played double drums with Questlove before. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah, and I've played with Sharky, the most amazing guitar player. And
Wow.
he actually spoke to our guitar player today because we're doing a D'Angelo tribute in Denver. And he's like, if you want to know anything about those guitar parts, just, like the exact notes. So we're getting the actual intel from the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about Forest Hills, because I feel like it's an interesting venue.
It's a really interesting venue. Yeah, like I had never been there. I'd never been there since. And it was just like, I think one of my guys called me, probably Shmeen's, my Adam Deitch, our guitar player, was like, we're going. I got you the ticket. Let's go. You know? And it was just a big place, but I sat on the side where I could really see Chris, because I always have to see the drummer and how that affects the band.
Yeah.
And it was great to see my friend Chris Dave, and we've become friends over the years. And yeah.
When you're watching a drummer performing live, what are you looking for?
His vibe, his consistency, and how he makes the music feel is the most important thing. Do I want to dance involuntarily? That's my biggest thing. Am I just moving, or am I thinking? Like, I like drummers that create a visceral thing in me where I'm just like moving, like without even thinking, let me bop my head, I'm bopping my head. That's a great drummer to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because when I've watched you, I'm noticing how you've got these little tiny things that you're hitting next to you. Whereas in heavy metal, they've got this giant set where you're hitting a gazillion things. But your technique is, you can hit anything that's little. And I'm kind of fascinated by that. Was your accuracy always that good?
I mean, I love percussion. Before I was allowed to play drums with my parents' band, I had to learn percussion first. So I had to be up there playing congas, cowbells, shakers, tambourines, and my mom would like put me on that first. I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, and then finally she's like, "You're ready to sit in." It was like they were doing gigs, and so I had to like be good enough to play drums at their professional gig at a nightclub.
Yeah.
So, but it was because I learned all the percussion first, I just started incorporating that in my kit, like a bell here, a shaker here, a tambourine here. And I just enjoy kind of this hybrid percussion drum thing together. And
yeah. I feel like you use your congas like how other people would use their toms. And so when you see it from afar, it doesn't look like you have that big of a set.
Yeah.
But you actually have a lot of percussion instruments in front of you.
Absolutely. A ton of little colors that add a little spices to what you're doing. And I started learning to play the hi-hat and the snare at my left and using my right to color with percussion, or playing the hi-hat and snare with my right and do percussion over here with the bongos and all that stuff. So it's kind of a split brain thing that I'm still working on.
Also, something that's unique about you with your hi-hat, since you bring that up, is it seems like it's kind of a loose, floppy hi-hat that you also kind of use as a cymbal a little bit. Is that something that your parents taught you, or you've learned that from somebody else?
What do you mean the loose, floppy?
Some people have it really tight, and they don't really use it as much as you do. Like you really use it in lots of different flavors. And I was just curious where you got that from.
Yeah, the loose hi-hat stuff is like Jay Dilla influence. I definitely wanted to keep that. We call it the drunken style, where it's like it's just kind of behind the beat, and it creates this like lilt. We call it, like the ocean, and it's just different from playing exactly on the beat or being metronomic. And the head bop is still there, but the hi-hat is sort of drunk.
Yeah.
So I kind of get into that stuff. I shout out to Jay Dilla, for how he influenced musicians and how to, especially drummers, on how to play drums. And, he definitely did play drums, and, everyone that knew him said he played. But the way he programs, it feels like a drummer, just a little looser than most drummers. So that's I picked that up from him.
You were telling me earlier that you were lucky enough to see Eminem's one of his first shows.
Yeah.
What was that like?
He did a Raucous Records tour, Raucous underground label from New York. And I believe I was in Boston going to college, and I believe me and our bass player Maverick Coombs he was there with me, and this, he opened the show or something. He was not the top of the bill. I think like maybe Mos Def was at the top of the bill at the time, but he came out and was really crazy. And I remember he threw a beer, like sprayed a beer at the crowd, and it hit these guys in front of us who thought I had spilled beer on them, and they turned around like they wanted to fight. And I went, no, it was the guy on stage. Like, so Eminem almost got me beat up. Thanks a lot, Eminem. But yeah, we were the original Slim Shady fans before he was,
He won you over immediately.
Absolutely. Like the rhythmic command. He's a drummer. He's like, he's up there with Big Pun and, Big L and like the guys that were real rhythmic geniuses. Biggie's a rhythmic genius. Jay, like if they play drums, they'd be the nastiest drummers,
Yeah.
They carried the Max Roach, the jazz tradition of the snare drum to rap,
So you weren't surprised when he became the biggest
not at
selling
all.
rapper of all.
You could tell the pocket that he was in it. And the same thing that Dre heard, like, this guy's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Blue Note is a place that used to play a lot in New York.
Yeah.
Did you see we've got one now here in LA?
I love that. I can't wait to play it.
Is that on your bucket
it's
list?
absolutely going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. We're
That's
good
awesome.
friends with Alex Curlin, who's been a guy responsible for bringing hip hop and jazz together, bringing in Mos Def to work with Robert Glasper, all that. And he kind of built that. And I was there for all of that in New York when he was creating that beautiful scene that exists now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing a lot of the late nights at Blue Note. So I remember when Robert moved to New York and I called him the sub for the keyboard player that I was playing with, James Hurt. And I didn't even know who he was. It was a recommendation from my bass player. I knew him. And they built this beautiful thing, and our last time at the Blue Note in New York, we played with Brand Nubian, who's like a classic, and Buckshot Shorty from Black Moon, classic like 90s hip hop stuff, which is my favorite era. And so the Blue Note's very responsible for bringing, golden era hip hop with live music and live jazz and funk stuff.
You guys have a new record that's coming out for Lettuce.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about it?
Let Us Cook. It's our best album yet. And I can't wait for people to hear it. It's the writing's getting better, simpler, but more just pockets getting deeper. We're better friends. Yeah, just so many elements to this record that I just can't wait for people to hear it.
Where'd you record it at?
At Colorado Sound. And we found this studio because we heard that D'Angelo worked there.
Oh.
Yeah, because they had the same board, the board that D'Angelo's engineer, Russ Elevato, likes. And so once Russ heard that they had the board that he likes, he agreed to, be the engineer for the record and taught us so many things about D'Angelo and ran the sessions kind of like the D'Angelo sessions where they take breaks and listen to Jimi Hendrix Are You Experience full volume in a studio to take a break, or like, some Curtis Mayfield record. So you clear out what you're working on with some amazing album that you've never really heard on expensive speakers, and so that was a great thing. We learned so much from Russ Elevato, and that's why D'Angelo did all his records with him.
Are you going to steal that technique the next time you produce bands?
Absolutely. Like, our last 2 records we did without him, 2 or 3, and we adopted a lot of his techniques. He was so into teaching us how he does it and how D'Angelo likes it, and the analog way, the organic way, no plugins, you use all hardware boxes, real circuitry, real things. And avoid all the digital plugins. So that way it's a true organic meal.
So when we hear this new record, Let Us Cook.
Yeah.
Very few plugins?
Nothing. No plugins.
No plugins.
Yeah.
And it's better than ever.
It just has that real feel and it'll, people will realize it down the line that it sounds different. Obviously plugins are getting better and better. It's harder for the average ear to tell.
Yeah.
but we're on that organic stuff. And you know, if Earth, Wind and Fire did that, if D'Angelo did that, like why wouldn't we do that? You know?
Yeah. When you play in a place like LA, is there any venues that you haven't played yet that's on your bucket list?
Well, we're playing New Year's Eve at the Bellwether.
Are you really?
Yeah, and I'm so excited about that.
Wow.
Which Prince, you know the history of the Bellwether?
The Glam Slam, right?
Right, tell me more.
He kind of, that was kind of his club for...
It was his club, exactly.
For, I think a year or two, or maybe longer. And that was like his club.
Yes. So we're excited to play Prince's LA club.
For New Year's Eve.
I also saw Prince at the, what's that small club across from the Rainbow Room?
You saw him at the Troubadour.
No,
you
smaller.
saw him at the Roxy?
Roxy. He did like a pop-up. Prince is playing and we got in. That was another concert that blew my mind. Being this close to him, he was playing guitar in front of me, you know.
How did you know that he was going to play there?
I got the tip. I just happened to be in LA, and
which is where Bob Marley has played.
Yeah.
Springsteen did in 1975, like super famous.
At the Roxy, yeah.
What do you remember approximately what year this was?
I'm going to go around like 2010, 11, around there.
Wow. Yeah. And?
Yeah, he had Cora and her husband. There was a husband and wife, drummer and bassist or keyboardist was in his band, and they were phenomenal. And it blew my mind. Sheila E. was there. I ran up to Sheila E. and told her about my mom, you know, so it was just a great night for me to see Prince in this tiny club that holds 500 people or something. Yeah.
Because I saw him play at the Troubadour, which is about a mile away.
Yeah.
And he played, I think you would like it. He played mostly jazz, but he played like bass and rhythm guitar and like let the band be the star that night. The show that you went to at the Roxy, what was that like?
Funky. When you see Prince live, it's almost like he used Little Red Corvette and those tunes to hook people in to the show where he could just funk out and do his thing. And, you know, there might be a 15-minute groove that might happen.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that really influenced Lettuce as well. Let's just go straight to there. Let's go straight to where, you know, our heroes, when they got into that funk place, let's just dig into that.
Also another great drummer.
Super funky drummer.
Yeah.
He can play everything. He's a genius.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing some time with us.